Prabhupada. In 19, he met Srila Prabhupada in 1969, and it has been 50 plus years. Maharaj has been serving the movement. Maharaj travels all over the world, and he used the seminars and presentations. So, to name a few, Maharaj has given seminar at Stanford and Harvard University and IITs, also Bits Pilani, and Maharaj visits different temples all over the world and different places. So we are very fortunate to have Maharaj at our center. So the place wherever Maharaj and holy saints they travel, they make that place into a holy pilgrimage. Kurvanti Tirthi Tirthani. So we are blessed to have Maharaj. So we welcome Maharaj with three big Hari Bols. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Haribo. During this, volume up a little bit, volume up a little bit. During this Memorial Day weekend, some of us were in Gitanagri for a Memorial Day weekend retreat. And what you see on the screen was the topic, the theme. And different speakers spoke on that theme. And this is this evening's discussion is from what's the part that I did from one section, and the banner or the title, Refuge for the Age of Kali. Refuge is maybe not the most common English word, refuge, but shelter, place of safety, because in this age of Kali, as you know from a practical experience as well as from the Srimad Bhagavatam itself, Manda samanda matayo manda bhagya hupadrata. This age of Kali is an ocean of faults. Kaler doshanadhe rajan. It's a very difficult place during difficult time, and sometimes we scream out, "How?" But there is a place of shelter, and that place of shelter or refuge is the Srimad Bhagavatam. So it was really nice hearing that topic discussed by different speakers from different angles. And one of the ways that I chose to speak is there's a verse in Canto 1, Chapter 2. It comes right after the 6 questions asked by the sages of Naimisharanya. And so let's recite the verse together. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana, unto Narayana Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. So once upon a time, a few years ago, I was a new devotee. And every morning we had Srimad Bhagavatam class, and still every morning we have Srimad Bhagavatam class. But something that we did in the early days is after reciting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 3 times, we recited this verse. Of course, we didn't have this because we said it every day, but that practice has kind of disappeared. So I want to please personally revive that practice because it's what the Bhagavatam says we should do. And it makes sense that you, when you want to receive something, eagerness to receive that something and looking up to the source from which one is going to receive, that respect and regard for the source, and then the message that comes from the source. So it's culture and it's common sense and it's the Srimad Bhagavatam's advice. So the verse that I spoke about first was this 1:3:43 Srimad Bhagavatam. Sometimes is referred to as the light of the Bhagavat or the light in the dark age of Kali. Some of you may know, and some of you may not know, that the first book that Srila Prabhupada had intended to be published while he was composing Canto 1 Srimad Bhagavatam in Vrindavan was Light of the Bhagavat. And here's the circumstance. Every fortnightly, Srila Prabhupada in the English language he began publishing Back to Godhead magazine in the 1940s. After he had left home in the Vanaprastha stage of his life, he, for a couple of years, moved here and there with no fixed residence. Eventually, he made Vrindavan his residence. And before he stayed at the Radha Damodar temple, he was staying at this little place called the Vangsi Gopal temple. Vangsi Gopal temple is very near to Keshi Ghat, if you know Vrindavan a little bit. Keshi Ghat is right along the side of the river Jamuna. It marks the place where Krishna killed the Keshi demon. And it's a pilgrimage place, Keshi Ghat. And very near to Keshi Ghat, just a short 2-minute, 3-minute walk away, is this Vangsi Gopal temple. Vangsi Gopal temple is one of the 5,000 temples. Prabhupada writes about 5,000 temples of Krishna temples. It's in one sense it's a temple, in another sense it's just a family's home, because wealthy people, in addition to having a home, they placed a deity in their home, and deities in homes in Vrindavan are deities of Krishna because they're lovers of Krishna. So you walk in the front gate, and then there's like a courtyard. In the courtyard, there was a calf or a young, a cow and a baby calf. So because the family that owned that little complex kept a cow and fed the cow and protected the cow and took milk from the cow and offered the cow to the deity. And the deity, you walk through the courtyard, and then in the back of the courtyard is a little temple, and in the temple is little deities. Vangsi Gopal, Radha, Vangsi Gopal. And then the family lives in that ground area, and Prabhupada had a room up on the second floor. And when you're in his room in the second floor, you look out the window and there's Keshigat. So he stayed there for 6 years. And writing Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1, the Bhaktivedanta purports, and going into Delhi from time to time to carry with him um, the publication, the Back to Godhead in English publication. There was multiple purposes of that publication. It was to follow the footsteps of his spiritual master, because Bhaktisiddhanta, in addition to his writing of volumes, he had fortnightly publications, one in Hindi, one in Bengali, and Prabhupada did one in English because that was the instruction from his spiritual master. So he went to Delhi, and not everybody in Delhi only speaks Hindi. Some people also speak English. So he would meet people, distribute his Back to Godhead, magazine. It was a stapled together publication, and speak his message. So he practiced his writing. He's got an opportunity to practice speaking his message, and he would eventually find some wealthy people that would help him with his publication work when it came time to publish the first canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, because he didn't have any means. He was a sannyasi shortly thereafter, and renounced order of life. So when one of those visits that he made to Delhi, somebody gave him a flyer that they had received, and the flyer was an announcement about uh, an event that was going to happen in Tokyo, and the event was given the title something very euphemistic, something very vague, and the world something something something. I can't remember. A kind of like a peace conference. This was shortly after World War II. Of course, Japan was involved in World War II, as were many countries in the world involved in World War II. So, following World War II, some few years later, there was a conference to bring the unity of mankind. That was it, something like that. Unity of mankind, which could mean anything, depends on what you want it to mean. So, Prabhupada wrote a letter to the organizer of the event because his name was on the flyer. And he said he'd like to make a presentation at that Unity of the World conference. And he got an invitation letter back. Invitation letter was specifically so that Prabhupada could get a visa to go to Japan and be a presenter. And the problem was he didn't have a passport, he didn't have a visa, he didn't have the airfare, and he didn't have anything but his writing ability. So he decided, let me write a book that can be presented like a paper, because those of you that are involved in academia, when you give a speech, commonly with the speech comes a paper. The paper is circulated. The speech is simpler than the paper, but the essence is in the paper. So he wrote a book, and that's what this cover is. It's the light of the Bhagavat. And he had a very visionary idea of what he wanted to happen. The misfortune is he didn't have the money to publish the book, so it never got published. He didn't have the airfare to get there, so he didn't go. But he had a whole thing. He made 48 chapters. He in detail described what he wanted as illustrations. He sent that to the event organizer and said, "Can you find an artist with Oriental art skills and make the artwork 48 art pieces?" And then he wanted him to blow them up and put them up around where the conference is. I mean, he knew how to promote the Bhagavatam's message. And his idea was very accurate. People in the Far East, they like, it's part of the culture, they like to learn lessons of life through scenes of nature, which is true. And so he took Canto 10, Chapter 20, which is the autumn season, which comes right after the hot summer season, and then the rainy season. And so, using that chapter of the Srimad, just scenes of nature, he wrote a book where lessons of life were taught based upon scenes of nature. And he called it Light of the Bhagavat in English. So, you're going to Japan, but the flyer was in English, and many learned people that would attend such an event would be English speaking, and the book could be translated into Japanese, no problem. All you have to have is some money and a translator. He didn't have either. So it didn't happen. I mean, it didn't get published. It didn't go. But many years later, maybe 20 something years later, the manuscript was found in a trunk, unpublished manuscript, and along with many other things that Prabhupada had kept safely in a trunk. And during that particular period of time, Tamal Krishna Maharaj had been assigned to take responsibility for preaching Krishna consciousness in China. His base at that time was in Hong Kong. And so the manuscript was given to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who did the Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He had it published. He found an artist, and she made all the artwork, and he was the art director, and she was the artist, and Prabhupada was the visionary, and the book got published in Chinese before it got published in English. So I'm mentioning this because that's what's in the image here, Light of the Bhagavat. But it's to illustrate that even before the Bhagavatam was published, Prabhupada had a vision of giving the world the light of the Bhagavat, and using that phrase, which comes from the verse that I want to speak about this evening, 1:3:43. So 1:3:43 is the last verse of chapter 3. Chapter 2 and chapter 3 of Srimad Bhagavatam are answers to the 6 questions that are asked in chapter 1 of Canto 1. So do it reverse. In Canto 1, chapter 1, we have a scene. The scene looked like this on the screen. There's Sutta Goswami in the forest of Naimisharanya, and he's being met by many sages, headed by Shonaka, that's the one in the front with the big beard, Shonaka Rishi. And the sages wanted to hear from Sutta what Sutta heard by hearing the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. In the audience, when Shukadev Goswami spoke to Maharaj Parikshit, there was an audience. And in the audience was Sutta. And Sutta was Sutta was the son of Romaharshan Sutta. And Romaharshan Sutta was entrusted by Vyas for the whole Purana section of the Vedas, the Itihasa and Purana section of the Vedas, Mahabharata and all the Puranas. Sutta's father was that person, Romaharshan Sutta. So he was gifted speaker. So there they are assembled. And in chapter 1, the assembly is described, who's who and all that. And then there's 6 questions. And the last of the 6 questions is on the screen. And the last of those 6 questions from chapter 1. Since Sri Krishna, the Absolute Truth, the Master of all mystic powers, has departed for his own abode, please tell us to whom the religious principles have gone for shelter. Notice it's not to what, but to whom. This person. Who? To whom? So the answer is Srimad Bhagavatam is the to whom. And here's the answer. This is 1343. So let's say the verse responsively, please. Krishne Swadamo Pagate Dharma Jnana Dibihi Saha Kalo Nashta Drisham Esha Puranarko Dunoditaha. So it's speaking of Krishna Dham. Krishna returned to Swadham, to his own abode. Krishna Swadhamo Pagate, along with Dharma, Jnana, Adabihi, etc. Beginning with Dharma and Jnana, Krishna left to his own abode. And therefore, Kalau Nashta Drisham Esha. Kalau, the age of Kali began shortly after Krishna's departure. And after Krishna's departure, this Arka, or the light, and Purana, that gives light in this age of darkness, that's the Srimad Bhagavatam, Dunodita, made its appearance. Here's Prabhupada's translation. This Bhagavat Purana is as brilliant as the sun, Arka, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. Very important verse. Very, very important verse. And it's referenced in many, many places by our acharyas, because the Srimad Bhagavatam is so important to all Vedic followers. I'm going to point out a few places where this emphasis is made. Here's a painting, BBT painting, on the upper left. That's Vyas, and he's holding a light. That's the Bhagavatam, because Vyas composed the Bhagavatam, and he's shining the light of Krishna into this dark age of Kali. And the bottom part is the behaviors and activities and the degraded lifestyle that is so prevalent in the age of Kali. In commentary about Srimad Bhagavatam, there's one of the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami called Tattva Sandarbha. Now, some of you may be already familiar, others may not be too much familiar with the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami. But Jiva Goswami was an incredibly prolific writer, 400,000 verses. So, for example, in Mahabharata, how many verses are there in Mahabharata? 100,000 verses. Now, Mahabharata is a big book, right? 100,000 verses. And how many verses are there in Srimad Bhagavatam? 18,000. How many verses are there in Bhagavad Gita? 700. So it's like he wrote 3 Mahabharats, maybe 6 or 7 Srimad Bhagavatams, 5 or 6 Bhagavad Gitas, and a number of other small books. And it wasn't just like Mahabharata's history. It's like this a story. And telling a story is different than intense, heavyweight philosophy. That's the style. Some of the writings of Jiva Goswami were the lighter, like Gopal Champu. It's telling the story of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan and out of Vrindavan. But heavy philosophy. He is an incredible writer. So one of the writings that he engaged in was writing 6 divisions of a book type called Sandarbha. By the way, one of his writings was explaining what a Sandarbha is and what a Champu is, and then he wrote the 6 Sandarbhas into Gopal Champu. Very scholarly, superlatively scholarly. So, of those 6 Sandarbhas, he begins in Tattva Sandarbha saying, what I want to describe is Krishna, because the Vedas, according to Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas reveal Krishna. But before describing Krishna, another question that requires an answer is, what's the best way to know Krishna? If you want to describe something, you have to know that something. So what's the best way to know the topic, Krishna? So then the beginning part of this Tattva Sandarbha is a section called Pramana Kanda. Pramana means means of knowing something or evidence or proof. Pramana, the means of knowing something. So how are you going to know? What's the best way to know about Krishna? What's the best way to know about the topic you want to know, Krishna? So he goes through a whole lengthy, very analytical, detailed procedure and comes to the conclusion that the best of all means of knowing something is Shabda. The best Shabda is Aparushaya Shabda. The best of Aparushaya means beyond human fallibility. Aparushaya Shabda. Shabda from a perfect person as opposed to an fallible person. And then from that Aparushaya Shabda, that's the Vedas, then the best of the Vedas is Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a whole lengthy, detailed, step by step. So the best means of knowing Krishna is Srimad Bhagavatam. And in that Tattva Sandarbha, there's 2 sections. The sections are called Anuchad. And one of them gives this very precise reference from multiple Shastras saying that Srimad Bhagavatam and Krishna are identical. It's important. Srimad Bhagavatam and Krishna himself, the book and the person are identical. We'll say it again. The book and the person, just like the name and the person named, Abhinatvam Nama Namino, that name and the person named Krishna, they're non-different. So when we say Krishna and the person Krishna, they're non-different. So that at least theoretically we understand. And same is also true for the book. The book and the person are non-different. And he gives some scriptural references to support that. The first of them he identifies, it's in this Anuchad 20, is from Skanda Purana. And he says, Skanda Purana says, just as the form of Krishna is Sat Chit Ananda, right? Eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Vigraha, Satchitananda Vigraha. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is equally Satchit Ananda Vigraha. Satchit Ananda. We had this in Gitanag, we had this discussion. Okay, yes, the knowledge of the Bhagavatam is eternal, Sat. The knowledge of the Bhagavatam is full of knowledge, chit. But where does the Ananda fit in? How is it the form of Krishna is Satchitananda? How is it the Bhagavatam is equally Satchitananda? And there's two answers. There's at least two answers. One answer is because that the hearer, as well as the speaker of the Bhagavatam, experience Ananda, because the sound vibration is full of Ananda. So the speaker experiences great happiness, and the audience, it stimulates ecstatic love for Krishna from Nectar of Devotion. Some of you like reading Prabhupada's books, so if you like reading Prabhupada's books, you'll appreciate some of these topics. Their ecstatic love for Krishna is stimulated by sound. The pastimes of Krishna in different pastimes stimulate different transcendental emotions, ecstatic emotions. That stimulation is called an udipan. It's technical language of Rupa Goswami. But this Srimad Bhagavatam stimulates, awakens that which is within, awakens ecstatic love for Krishna. The Srimad Bhagavatam does that, and therefore is filled with Satchitananda. And the second explanation is, in this age of Kali, the primary means of deliverance is what? Chanting the holy name. We all know the verse. Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama Eva Kalo Nasteva, Nastyeva, Nastyeva, Gatiranyata. Some of you don't know the verse, but you'll come, just stick around, you'll learn the verse. Harer Nama, the holy name. 3 times. Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama. Absolute emphasis. Eva Kevalam. Eva, certainly. Kevalam, absolutely, certainly. It's the means of achieving spiritual perfection. So Bhakti Siddhanta, Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, Bhakti Siddhanta, often would speak on the Bhagavatam, and one of the messages is, when there's the chanting of the holy name, the chanting of the holy name must be accompanied with Harikatha. Just as we don't worship Krishna alone, we worship Krishna with Radha. And Radha is the Ananda portion of Krishna's internal potencies. We hear Harikatha, which is the Ananda portion, along with chanting of the holy name. Got it? So Srimad Bhagavatam is Satchit Ananda. It's the Harikatha portion that goes well with the chanting of the holy name. It's worshipping Radha Krishna, not just Krishna. So Skanda Purana, back to Tattva Sandarbha, Anuchhed 20, Skanda Purana is being referred to as saying, just as the form of Krishna is Satchitananda, equally so the Bhagavatam is Satchitananda. Then he makes reference to a statement in Padma Purana, where in Padma Purana it says, without a doubt, Srimad Bhagavatam is directly Lord Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam, without a doubt, is directly Lord Krishna. Padma Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam is directly Lord Krishna. And then this verse that we just said together, it says, this is the when Krishna departed. Where did Krishna depart? Who knows the Bhagavatam well enough to know? Where did Krishna depart? Prabhas. Prabhas. Prabhas is a place that's Dwarka was an island. To get to Dwarka, you had to go by boat or be a good swimmer or something. So Dwarka was an island, and then across the sea was the mainland. And very near to where you travel by boat to get to the mainland is where Prabhas is. And that's where Krishna went before he departed. There's some details, but that's the place, Prabhas. And the description goes like this. Krishna's appearance was in Mathura. So in poetic language, the sun rose in the east. So from where Prabhas is, east is Mathura. The sunrise mountain of Mathura is where Krishna appeared. The sunset mountain where Krishna disappeared is Prabhas. The sun rose in Mathura, the sun set in Prabhas. And shortly after the sun set came the moon. Sometimes, shortly after the sun sets, the moon will rise. And in this case, the moon didn't just give the light of the moon, but as brilliant as the sun. As brilliant as the sun, shortly after the departure of Krishna. As brilliant as the sun, Srimad Bhagavatam appeared. Prabhupada's poetic explanation. The sun is very hot. It's burning hot sometimes, depends on where you are geographically, but burning hot, scorching hot. But the light of the moon is very soothing. But if there's the light of the moon that's as brilliant as the sun, but as cooling as the moon, that's Srimad Bhagavatam. As brilliant as the sun, but as cooling as the moon. Because when Krishna came, Krishna killed demons. The Bhagavatam didn't kill demons. It killed demoniac mentality. As brilliant as the sun, but as soothing and cooling as the moon. For this age of Kali. And there's one more reference that he makes in this Anuchhed 20, and that's a reference to, there's a section in Padma Purana called the Bhagavat Mahatmya section. It's many chapters. And in those many chapters of Padma Purana, there's a description where each of the 12 cantos are identified as like the different parts of Krishna's body. The first two cantos are like Krishna's lotus feet. The next two cantos are like Krishna's two thighs. The next two cantos are like Krishna's waist, and so forth. And it gives some detail of what's in the canto and why it's likened to this part or that part of Krishna's body. So the 12 cantos of the Bhagavatam are likened to the form of Krishna. The form of Srimad Bhagavatam and the form of Krishna are identical, like one another. Nice. It's important. So, and the jumping point, the springboard point is 1:3:43, because when Krishna departed, Krishna appeared again shortly thereafter in the literary form. It's none different than him. And he makes again 3 Anucheds later this nice description, making reference to 1:3:43, where his indication is he draws the following understanding that there in the sky there are many luminaries at night. many stars, etc. But those many stars, etc., don't give the illumination that the moon gives at night. So similarly, without the help of Srimad Bhagavatam, the other scriptures, which are Vedic, they're from the same source as all the other Vedic texts, but they cannot accurately depict reality without the help from Srimad Bhagavatam, or Srimad Bhagavatam makes the other scriptures complete. This is it's a language, a very significant language that Jiva Goswami uses. He uses a metaphor to help explain what he's trying to convey. Supposing you have some jewelry, and the jewelry has a broken part, a little chip missing. You don't fill in that chip of the jewelry with lead or iron or some base metal. It needs gold if it's a golden ornament. So he uses that as a metaphor to say this Srimad Bhagavatam itself is golden like, and so it makes complete the other portions of Vedic texts that are not yet complete. It makes them complete. The reality can be understood in its completeness from Srimad Bhagavatam and not without it. It's a nice understanding. Here's a little drawing of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, one of our great acharyas. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur wrote many, many, many commentaries. He, like Jiva Goswami, he was very prolific. So in his commentary to 111 Bhagavatam, that's the very first verse of the Bhagavatam, he similarly indicates the first verse of the Bhagavatam is indicating the oneness between the Bhagavatam itself and the subject of the Bhagavatam, which is Krishna. The oneness between the topic of Krishna and Krishna. The Bhagavatam and Krishna there's a oneness. The book Bhagavat and the person Bhagavat have a relationship of oneness with one another. That's another verse that's a very important verse. Nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistaki. Those of you that like reading Prabhupada's books, you'll know the verse. Those of you that are a little bit newer, you may not know the verse, but stick around. There are some very important verses that you'll hear again and again. If you're hearing this one for the first time, stick around, you'll hear it again and again. And it just kind of grows on you. It just, when you hear the verse, all these lights go on and the bells ring and everything becomes very clear through the light of the Bhagavat. That's how it works. Just through sound. The picture starts to become very, very clear. In this dark age of Kali, light is made available through the sound of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Krishna, the category of Krishna is Bhagavan. And that which is in relation to Bhagavan is Bhagavata, just its grammar. Vyakarana, Sanskrit grammar. Bhagavan, in relation to Bhagavan, is Bhagavata. Same root, but in the particular grammatical use, in relation to Bhagavan is Bhagavata. So there's the book Bhagavata, and there's the devotee Bhagavata, and both Bhagavatas, the book and the devotee Bhagavata, they're in relation to Bhagavan. They derive their meaning, their name, and their meaning from Bhagavan. So the book and the devotee Bhagavata are to be served according to the Bhagavatam. And by service to the book and the person, Bhagavata, then something happens. Service to the book starts with just hearing. Shravanam, Kirtanam. Do Shravanam, Kirtanam, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Shravanam, Kirtanam a lot, and something happens. Cleansing happens. And when that cleansing happens, that which you have forgotten becomes remembered. Smaranam. Here's a little Prabhupada story. I wasn't present, but I heard from Satsrup Maharaj, who was present. The very first public kirtan that was held was the result of having regular evening kirtan at 26 Second Avenue. Some of you know what 26 Avenue. Anyone here not know what 26 Second Avenue is? You all know what it is. It's a little storefront on Second Avenue, 26 Second Avenue. And the devotees, the new fledgling Hare Krishna people, managed to get up enough money to rent a storefront so that 3 nights of the week, Prabhupada could come and perform kirtan and then speak on Bhagavad Gita and then more kirtan and then prasadam, 3 nights of the week. Pretty simple. And the kirtans started, with a couple handful of people, but the Prabhupada's kirtans were very powerful. So after some time, the numbers started to grow, and after some time, they started to dance. Prabhupada didn't tell them to dance. They just felt like they wanted to dance. And then it became, part of what 3 nights of the week you do. You go to the Swamiji and you do kirtan and you get up and dance. And it got to be really ecstatic. Maybe you've seen videos of those days and hippies swinging their heads back and forth and singing and getting up and dancing and so forth. So one fine day, Brahmananda, who was a big devotee, both literally and otherwise, he was a leader. He was a big devotee. He asked Prabhupada, he said, okay, can we take this chanting like this into the public? Big smile, Prabhupada said, I was just waiting for you to ask. Let's go. But he said, but you have to get a permit because I don't want to have a problem with the police. So they got a permit for Tompkins Square Park. Maybe you've seen the videos of it with this big bass drum, boom, boom, boom. And because they didn't have mridanga and cartels, they had big cymbals and big bass drum and walking along the street to get to Tompkins Square Park from 26 Second Avenue. They sat under the very old, tall elm tree for 3 hours chanting Hare Krishna and dancing after some time. And, it was a spectacle. People hadn't seen anything like this before. So they all crowded around, and there's photographs, the big crowd of people that's like, what are these people? What planet are they from? And at the end of 3 hours, Prabhupada stood up. Maybe you've seen the photograph. His hands folded in front of him, big church steeple in the background behind him. Look closely at the picture, you'll see it. And supposing you're a world acharya, the first time you're addressing a public audience, what are you going to say? Hear the drum roll. And Prabhupada said, I wasn't there, but Satsrup Maharaj said, what Prabhupada said was, he looked around, I've not come to teach something new. I've come to remind you of that which you have forgotten. Cool, huh? So what is it that we have forgotten? Our relationship with Krishna. Who we are, we forgot. And who Krishna is, we forgot. Instead, we got this covering of something that we're not and think that's who we are. like the body and the designations of the body. I'm a brown one or a white one or a black one or an orange one or a purple one or a man or a woman or this religion, that religion. It's all coverings. It's not who we are, because we've forgotten that those coverings help us forget who we are. So how are you going to remember who you are when you're thinking that you're somebody that you aren't? That this process of sound vibration removes the covering and awakens who you really are, and your remembrance of your relationship with your source, the energetic source from which you've come as the energy of the Supreme. So that's the effect of Srimad Bhagavatam. And that's what this Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is indicating, the 111 Bhagavatam purport commentary. I'll read. This Bhagavatam bears no comparison to any other work, in the sense that it's Krishna himself. It manifests in this world through Shukadev Goswami speaking to Maharaj Parikshit. It was then written in a written form by Vyas, because Vyas taught Shukadev, Shukadev spoke it, but then later Vyas wrote it. It's likened to the sun, because the sun, through the sunshine, one gets light. And through the light of the sunshine, then one can see. Without the sunshine, one can't see. It has 12 cantos, like the 12 phases of the moon, the 12 months or phases of the moon, by different names. So 12 cantos have different names. And 18,000 verses that are likened to the leaves of a desire tree, because the Bhagavatam, all of the Vedas, are likened to a desire tree, kalpavriksha, desire tree. Anything can be derived from the Vedas. The Vedas are giving dharmic method of achieving anything and everything. Everything, even bad stuff, but everything. And the Srimad Bhagavatam delivers everything through its 18,000 verses, like the 18,000 leaves of a tree. Now we see another verse. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on 1.3.43, the verse that we're focusing on this evening, the light of the Bhagavat verse. He indicates that previously a question was raised of Sutta, where unto whom have religious principles taken shelter? And this verse gives the answer. Krishna had just departed to his own abode, Swadhama, Pagate, from Prabhas. So the setting of the sun, the sunset mountain of Prabhas, was chronologically after the sunrise mountain of Krishna appearing in Mathura. And now that Krishna has disappeared, now what? The darkness of this age of Kali, it can be dispelled, is dispelled by the light that comes from the form of Krishna as Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he makes reference to a verse that comes in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. 11th canto Bhagavatam, chapter 30, is in Prabhas. It's after Krishna decided to leave. Who would come and see him but Uddhava, his dear, dear devotee? So earlier in Dwarka, before Krishna left Dwarka to go to Prabhas, Uddhava understood Krishna is going to leave. How did he know that? He was so intimately associated with Krishna. He understood Krishna's mind. Krishna is going to leave the world. So he went and fell at Krishna's feet, started crying, literally begged him, please take me with you, please take me with you. Krishna said, I have some service for you. I won't take you with me. Here's the service. I'm going to give you some teachings, and I'd like you to take the teachings, visit Narayan Rishi in Badrinath, because during my pastimes, I didn't get to see them. I went so many other places, but I didn't go there. So you go as my messenger, you carry this message. When Krishna spoke to Arjuna, he spoke 18 chapters and 700 verses, Bhagavad Gita. To Uddhava, it's many more verses and more chapters, 23 chapters, Uddhava Gita, in Dwarka, not in the Kurukshetra battlefield. It's a celebrated section of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then Krishna sent Uddhava to go to Narayan Rishi and deliver this teaching that you heard from me, because Uddhava had a good memory. He didn't need a tape recorder or a recording device or a digital something. He just had a good memory. And he not only had a good memory, he understood everything because that was his capacity. Very gifted, very dear to Krishna. If you had to compare who is more dear, is Arjuna more dear or is Uddhava more dear? It's a toss-up. But like Arjuna is so dear, Arjuna is an eternal associate of Krishna. Wherever Krishna appears, Arjuna is there. They're inseparable, Arjuna and Krishna. Uddhava is like that. Anyway, without more because of time, Uddhava is very dear to Krishna. So he understood everything. And he was so dear to Krishna and Krishna is so dear to him that he didn't make it all the way to Badrinath. He doubled back, knowing that I'm not going to see Krishna again. So he went back and he saw Krishna at Prabhas. We'll see some paintings of that. So when he came back, he asked Krishna again, can you retell? But he didn't say it that way. He said, when you spoke to Lord Brahma, you revealed yourself in fullness to Lord Brahma. Could you explain to me what you explained to Lord Brahma? There's not 23 chapters following that, but one can understand. It's very high level. And it just says the question. It says the question in a place where Uddhava is telling Uddhava, later he left when before Krishna departed, he said, now I told you to go, you go. So he went to Badrinath. On his way to Badrinath, Krishna said to Uddhava, on your way to Badrinath, you're going to meet up with Vidura. And sure enough, Uddhava, before he got to Badrinath, he came across Vidura. And Uddhava said, just before Krishna departed, he mentioned your name. And Uddhava's like, Vidura's thinking, wow, Krishna thought of me before he left. How fortunate. I mean, he was smashed that Krishna had left, but he already knew this detail. He already knew that Krishna had left because he had already been to Prabhas and he knew Moshe the Leela that happened, the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty, annihilating themselves. He knew all that. So after Uddhava left, Krishna called Daruka. Who's Daruka? Chariot driver. And he told Daruka, I want you to go immediately to Dwarka, because shortly after I depart, the whole of Dwarka is going to again enter into the sea. And everyone has to vacate Dwarka right now, because otherwise they'll drown. And the queens should be taken by Arjuna to Hastinapur to be taken care of by Arjuna. Because by this time, Yudhishthira is installed as the king, the emperor of the world. Rajasuya Yagya, the Kurukshetra battle, and everything's done. So he's in Hastinapur. Take the queens to Hastinapur. Tell Arjuna, escort the queens to Hastinapur. And then now Dwarka has to carry this message. Krishna is leaving, and the city of Dwarka is going to be submerged, so save yourselves. Krishna gave you this instruction. So Krishna then Dwarka, see on the screen, Dwarka speaking to Krishna. Just as on a moonless night, people are merged into darkness and cannot find their way. Now that I have lost sight of your lotus feet, my Lord, I have lost my vision, and I'm wandering blindly in darkness. I cannot tell my direction, nor can I find any peace. So Krishna is likened to the sun, by which one can see. And in Krishna's absence, it's like a moonless night. No sun, no moon, dark night. I can't see my way. Now, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points to this verse in the Bhagavatam, saying that the Bhagavatam, as Krishna is like light, the Bhagavatam is also like light. That's what the verse is, 1:343. And he makes reference, one more reference, and we're done for this evening. When Krishna meets with, when Uddhava meets with Vidura, he tells Vidura that Krishna spoke of you just before he departed. And now that Krishna has departed, my dear Vidura, the sun of the world, Lord Krishna, has set. And our house, he's saying our house because they're relatives. Uddhava and Vidura are from the same royal family. Our house has now been swallowed by the great snake of time. What can I say to you about our welfare? So Krishna is likened to the sun. The Bhagavatam is likened to the sun. And therefore there's the likeness between Krishna's sun and Bhagavatam's sun. They both give darkness so that one can see. So now back to the verse. In this dark age of Kali, how are we to see our way? It's dark. And, you don't have to look really hard. You don't have to get a magnifying glass. Just look around and see the degraded condition and going down and down and down and down and down and down and down. And darker and darker. It's the nature of this age. Rapidly, isn't it? Degradation, rapidly, without listing. Degradation, down and down and down. So how to not be influenced by that? Or your children, how to have your children not influenced by that? What's the shelter? It's this light of the Bhagavat. It has the power to lift persons who are unfortunately impacted negatively by the age of Kali, to be protected from those negative influences, that conditioning that's all around us, and to be relieved of that conditioning and take shelter of something that's filled with light. So we can see what's what. We can see who we are. We can see that place from which we have come, their original source of existence, and meet Krishna face to face. That's the fruit. Here's just an image, a few I like art. So here, this is Uddhava falling at Krishna's feet in Dwarka when he knows that Krishna is going to depart. He's crying, asking Krishna, please take him with him. There's other paintings that show a little more casual. Here he has his hand on Krishna's leg, and Krishna's gesturing, giving some indication to Uddhava in the Uddhava Gita. Then later he comes, doubles back, and he sees Krishna in Prabhas. Very beautiful scene. Krishna's leaning on a young banyan tree in his four-armed form, and the person behind Uddhava is Maitreya. He just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and Maitreya then also heard everything that Krishna spoke to Uddhava, because later Maitreya was called upon to give teachings to Vidura of what he heard Krishna speak to Uddhava. And here's a similar painting. There's Maitreya with the beard, and there's Krishna leaning against the young banyan tree, and there's Uddhava, palms folded, hearing Krishna's final words before his departure from Prabhas. So this whole scene is part of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, which is meant specifically to give light in this dark age of Kali. So back to the question from chapter 1. Unto whom have religious principles taken shelter, now that Krishna, who has been their shelter, has departed? Answer, Srimad Bhagavatam. Religious principles take shelter, and one can get light, not just by religious principles, but light from the sound vibration of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's speaking personally, it's life-changing. I mean, I happen to like Srimad Bhagavatam a lot. And my experience subjectively is it protects one from the onslaught of the age of Kali, or let's just say even just everyday life. In everyday life, there's good fortune, there's ill fortune. There's circumstances of life that are troublesome. Yes? Sometimes. All the time. And now, where do you go for shelter when it's troublesome? Or in the language that Prabhupada used, tribulation. Different ways of saying, tough times. So where do you go? So you can go because I want relief from the tough times, so you go to the Bhagavatam. But supposing the Bhagavatam is something that you do regularly, not just when there's tough times, but every day. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Supposing you do that for some number of years, 55 years, do it for 55 years, every day, Srimad Bhagavatam. What happens? It's not just something out there anymore. It's something that's in here. You carry it with you. And that light helps you deal with the onslaughts of material nature, that it's not going to stop, but how you respond to it is going to be altogether different, because there's strength and there's light inside. There's shelter that's inside. In course of time. It takes a while because we're covered. But as coverings become removed, then you're carried by the fruit of that sound vibration. So, light of the Bhagavat. I'll stop and see if there's some. Wow, it's a good sound system. Blew the circuit. So if you have a comment or a question, please raise your hand. There we go.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, very nice class and motivating. So Maharaj, I had a one quick question. Maybe it is not important, but in chronological order, Srimad Bhagavatam is the last Purana, right?
Srimad Bhagavatam
is
what?
a last Purana because Padma Purana has a reference of Srimad Bhagavatam. So I just wanted to understand.
You want to know chronologically, did Padma Purana come before Bhagavatam?
Yeah.
Because because Padma Purana speaks about the Bhagavatam, so
Yeah.
logically, Padma Purana would chronologically come first, Bhagavatam would chronologically come second. You're Sherlock Holmes.
Got it.
However, all the Puranas, their histories, so it's not exactly like you described. That is to say, even before the Bhagavatam appeared, Padma Purana could write about it. After the Bhagavatam appeared, Padma Purana could write about it.
Makes sense. Got it. Sure. Thank you, Maharaj.
The detail is found in Canto 1, Chapter 7. The detail is that Vyas compiled all the Vedas and all the Puranas and was still not satisfied. Narada visited him, told him what to do. He did what Narada told him to do. And then he expanded the Srimad Bhagavatam to what we have now, the 18,000. But there was already a synopsis Srimad Bhagavatam, the Chaturshloki Bhagavatam. So this is the second edition. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for light of Bhagavat. The first sloka, like there is a translation. There is a Naranarayana Rishi. You mentioned also.
Yeah.
So is that Naranarayana is a form of Vishnu, or is a person who is the name of Naranarayana is a Rishi is there?
It's neither of those. It's in one sense, it's a manifestation of Krishna, or an aspect of Krishna, but Nara refers to a person and Narayana refers to the Supreme. So Narayana, they're often depicted as two forms, but one entity, much like Krishna and Arjuna. Now, Krishna and Arjuna are two different entities. Krishna is the Supreme, and Arjuna is his dear devotee. So not the same, but inseparable. And that inseparableness is profoundly manifest with Narayana. So how to describe is your question specifically is the form a form of Narayan known as Narayan Rishi, but it's two entities. So it's two entities, Nara and Narayan, that are inseparable, spoken of as if one entity, but they're two entities. There's an elderly lady in the back.
Hare Krishna. Swamiji, you just said that to dispel the dark ages of Kali, we have to take refuge in Bhagavatam. But you think if everybody accepts this, we'll have a lot of peace in the world. And
Have
is it
what?
possible?
Peace in the world.
See, because all of us will not take refuge in Bhagavatam.
Oh, you bet it. Yes, you're correct. But there can be peace inside, even there's chaos outside.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Anything else? Are you letting me off light? Srila Prabhupada ki? Don't go away yet. I have some Mahaprasadam to distribute.